Hi, I'm David from Levika Photography, and today we'll be checking out the Rokinon 12mm f2 lens. And this is the exact same lens for APS-C size versus micro four thirds. And we're going to test it on this camera body, the Olympus OMD-EM5 II, and the Sony a6000, because originally I had bought one for the Sony a6000, had it for a while, then decided to get the Tuit because the extreme corners were problematic. Had the Tuit for a while, and then decided to sell that so I could buy this and a couple other lenses. 12 element, 10 group design, and originally I thought this was the same as the Zeiss Tuit, but it turns out it's not. They are the same size physically, but the Zeiss Tuit actually has 11 elements in 8 groups. It has a 9-bladed aperture where this has a 6-bladed, but it is a curved aperture. So, you know, the bokeh is not so bad, but again, you have a very deep depth of field with this lens because it's a wide angle. The wider the lens, the more you have in focus all the time, so it's easier to get into infinity. Just to show you, 3 feet to infinity. That's where the last number is on there, 3 feet. So, you know, according to this, we could get all the way up to 6 inches away from our subject. And you know, honestly, I've never tested this. So, let me see here. Is that actually true? Yes, it is. Right now, we're 6 inches away. So, yeah, 6 inches. Anyway, it's not really meant to be a macro lens or anything like that. This lens is really just meant to be a good solid wide angle lens. Now on the Sony a6000, this is the equivalent of 18mm, which to me is the perfect wide angle lens format. I like 18mm. That is like, you get some, not really visual distortion, but you just have a very wide feel to it. It's hard to describe. It puts you in the element when you're actually looking at the photo versus just seeing more of the photo. But not too much to where it actually distorts. Now on the Olympus, this guy right here, this is the equivalent of 24mm. And we can use an adapter, and if you want to hold that really quick, it's right here in my pocket. So here's the adapter. Now the beauty of this is if you have a 4/3 camera and a Sony a6000, you can get the E-mount to 4/3 adapter, and they're very thin, so this kind of gives you an idea of where the thickness is, the difference between the two form factors. So this only moves that lens, I guess that would be 1/8 of an inch farther away from the body, farther away from the sensor. So anyway, let's look into this. Should be very cool. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to compare this lens on both bodies. Now, if this lens technically is designed for APS-C size, we're going to use it on micro four thirds. Rokinon, all they do is change the back plate. So it's the same lens on both. Now that also means it has the same convergence on both bodies because it has the same distance from the back element to the sensor. So the depth of field isn't going to change. A lot of people for some reason think that it does change. But in this case, because it's the same lens on two different bodies, one's APS-C size, one's micro four thirds, all it's going to do is crop. So we're going to go ahead and take the photos on this and see how they look. So let me zoom in here. And I have my zoom set up. I'll zoom in on our bench because this is where we're focusing in on. And this is the view that we're actually going to be capturing. So we're just going to do this in aperture priority, and I'm shooting 1/3 of a stop brighter than normal, just to kind of bring out a little bit of detail in the shadows. Alright, so let's have a look at these photos really quick. This is on the Sony a6000, and this is a f2. And what we did was we focused in right here on this bench, and let me make sure that that is correct. Yes, it is. So you can see that this lens in general, now the outside corners are a little soft, Let's take a look down here. Yeah, this brick area gets muddled out a little bit. If we go over here, you can see this extreme corner right here gets a little soft. And then along this edge, you can see it right here, the chromatic aberrations that cause this purple lens flaring. And that is not easy to correct. But like I said, on my 12mm 2-it video, a lot of people have been using the 12mm 2-it profile in Photoshop to help correct for the Rokinon 12mm, which I thought was interesting. But anyway, that was at f2. This is at f4. Now f4 is where everything starts to fall together. The extreme corners are still a little sensitive. That's the only way I could really put it. And we still have chromatic aberrations going down the left side. But if we look at the center of the image overall, is extremely sharp all the way through. Now f8 is the sweet spot of this lens, in my opinion. Technically it's f5.6, but at f8, the extreme corners, that's where they're rated their highest. So if we look out here, this is where the actual corners come in to look really good, very usable, extremely sharp, and we still have some of that purple fringing chromatic aberration going on, and but here it's far less than it was at f2. And if you're doing architectural work, I would only shoot at f8 on this lens. Just leave it there and rely on that. f5.6 if you need to open it up a little bit, f11 if you need to stop it down even a little bit more. But outside of that, that's about it. Okay, so right here, this is at f16. f16, this lens is still usable, but it does get a little softer and not ultra sharp. Now originally, when I shot my resolution chart, I was getting the same numbers off of this one that I was the 2-it. And I believe it was somewhere around 3,100 lines of resolution. And to me that seems to be about right. Now at f22 you can see this thing just goes flat and it's not even usable. So no reason to even look at f22. Okay, so really quick, this was shot with the Olympus OMD-5D Mark II indoors, and this is my assistant Allison. And just to see what it looked like for bokeh blur. And we shot this at f2, and I'm only like 2 feet away from her. And you can see right here that she's perfectly in focus, and we've got a good blurry background. Everything seems to be fairly smooth for as soft as you can possibly get it. But realistically, this lens has a lot of depth of field, so trying to give it that shallow look is very hard to do. You literally have to be 2 feet away from the person to do it. So anyway, let's move on here. All right, so this is on the Olympus at f2, and this is insanely sharp at f2, all the way open. It's like, holy cow. And it looks like just about everything is in focus. And we're cropping out the extreme corners, so we don't have to worry about those chromatic aberrations that we saw on the A6000. Now if we go to the next one, this is at f4, and this lens just shines at f2 and f4 on here. Now you don't quite hit infinity back here at f4, but you know, if you're looking to like capture a room or something like that, this does a great job of it. Now let's move on to f8. And f8 again is definitely the sweet spot of this lens. And this one you get everything in, from foreground all the way back to the mountain in the background to infinity. Everything is perfectly in focus. And the image quality is just outstanding. I mean, that is just insanely sharp. You know, you may have a half a pixel of chromatic aberrations bouncing off of high contrast areas like this truck. Like right here, you can see just a little bit of purple fringing, but so minor. And I mean, the image quality is just outstanding. Now at f16, it's still pretty good, just like the A6000. Still very sharp, holds together very well. You know, if you need to stop it down, this is where you'd go. Now, unfortunately, at f/22, it goes soft. And at this point, to me, it becomes unusable. So, you know, realistically, like I said, you can shoot all the way open through f/8, gives you the best image quality, still usable to f/16, but f/22 is a dud. But this is phenomenal on the Olympus. Let's look at barrel distortion. How much barrel distortion does this actually create? Well, because you're shooting with a manual lens, you're not able to actually get the lens data into the camera, so the lens data is not going to be able to correct your image for you. You're going to have to do it in Photoshop. So here's a window that I shot, and obviously you can see there's a little bit of barrel distortion, you know, on the edges of the windows, gives it that kind of fisheye effect. So how much does it take to actually fix it? So we'll go into lens correction, we'll go into custom, and then we'll bring this down to about 3%. And right about there. So 3%, and then we'll scale the image up here just a little bit, probably about 3% as well, and hit OK. So that looks like that gives us a very flat image. So yeah, I think it's about 3% barrel distortion overall. To fix that, now let's go into this other image here and double check it. Now this is the top of a parking garage, in case you're wondering what this is. I just shot this really quick to kind of get an idea of what it was that we were looking at. Let's go filter lens correction, and it's at the same settings, 3%, and this seems to correct that really well, all the way down to infinity on the lower part of the image, all the way up. So if we go up here and view it, let me see here, scale this up just a little bit. Alright, now we can see that it looks pretty clean. You know, the lines look very straight. So yeah, 3% distortion, that's actually pretty minimal. Yeah. Alright, so what's the final word on this lens? You know, to be honest with you, on the Sony a6000, I never really got into this lens. I never liked it. And that's why I got rid of it the first time. I went to the 12mm to it because the outside corners just had too much chromatic aberrations going on. You know, purple fringing basically. And it's a little soft on the extreme corners. But on the Olympus, this thing is gold. Because it crops in those extreme corners, everything within that is just phenomenal. And you know, it's equivalent to 24mm on this camera body, so it's not quite as wide as I would like it to be, but it's a perfect carry-around lens. I mean, 24mm is a great focal length for just having a normal wide instead of an extreme wide like an 18 or 12 if it was on full frame. But anyway, on this camera body, it's absolutely phenomenal. I love it. On the a6000, I would still recommend it just for its price point. But realistically, you know, those outside edges, if you're doing professional interiors, you might want to go with the to it. But I hope you guys like this video. Give me a thumbs up, leave a comment. Other than that, subscribe to my channel for more information like this, and we'll talk to you guys later.